Hey, Kalpesh, man, thank you for joining me today. This is our 2021 conference. This is our third annual conference. So we're really excited to be able to meet with you, talk with you. So at Seeds of Wisdom, we focus on the four core values of integrity, discipline, education, and ambition. So I'm glad to have you today to be able to talk to our young men. Could you go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Kalpesh Mistry. I'm a medical doctor. I just graduated from residency actually last July or June. And now I'm practicing full time, urgent care, wound care clinic, and some med spas. So I'm staying pretty busy. But, me and Brandon actually went to high school together. And so it's been quite some time since we connected. But I'm happy to do this for the youth, youth empowerment. And I'm excited to be here and kind of share some of my, wisdom and any words of advice I can provide for the youth out there. So I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. And it really has been a long time. One of my most vivid memories of you and I being together was we had geometry class, and geometry was really tough for me that year because I went to college to be an English major. I taught English in high school for a little bit. And so math was not really my thing, not the geometry part. Algebra, I was fine. Pre-calc, fine, but not geometry. So you were a very helpful peer. So thank you for helping me get through geometry.
Anytime. If you need any more help in the future, you just let me know.
Man, I think I'm done with that forever, but we'll see. Hopefully I don't ever have to touch geometry. Well, maybe when my daughter gets to high school, I might have to look at it with her. But other than that, I'm going to stay away from geometry.
I'm with you 100%.
Cool, man. So I just want you to talk about the core values, right? We're going to ask you a few questions, and with those, your questions or with your responses, just kind of talk about how those values have kind of emerged throughout your life and in your career. So the first one, integrity, we talk about that means doing the right thing when nobody's looking. So what does that mean for you in your life and in your career?
Well, I mean, integrity itself in the field of medicine, it's absolutely fundamental. And the fact that every patient really deserves an honest and a reliable physician that's going to be true to his or her words, especially when their life is literally in our hands. You're not going to build that patient, the physician relationship if you lack in integrity and if you've broken their trust. It's not only essential in my field of medicine, but really every job field. Once you show that dishonesty, it'll spread like wildfire, first off, and people will only forget that time that you were dishonest. They'll hang on to it forever. They'll spread the word, and they'll forget everything positive that you've done for them in the past, just because you didn't show a sense of integrity, you were dishonest, so with that being said, don't ever compromise on integrity, especially during your lowest and weakest points in life. That's when it will really be tested ultimately. So you have to be true to yourself. You have to remain honest to yourself and all others around you. In my opinion, integrity is just absolutely essential in forming your character and building your reputation, especially at a young age. Building that foundation of honesty and trust among your peers is just absolutely critical. And so, that's kind of how it plays a role in my life, primarily with the patients that I see. But like I said, it can affect anyone in anybody's career. So.
Yeah, thank you. And I what really resonated with me when you talked about integrity is that you could really kind of that mistrust, I should say, that a patient might have, and then it could just kind of ruin the practice too. That, hey, I don't trust these doctors with my life, and so no matter whether you're a doctor or whatever else, like you have to have integrity. You have to do the right thing because it's just the right thing to do, and it's a good way to live. So thank you for sharing your perspective on that.
Of course.
And so another thing we focus on with our guys is discipline, self-discipline. So we talk about being able to overcome distractions and kind of counteract those distractions and overcoming those temptations. So what does that mean for you as a young man when you were growing up and your career, any situation you want to share with our guys?
Yeah. So discipline overall is, just another vital aspect of medicine and pursuing medicine. Without discipline, none of us in this field of medicine would be where we're at today. Really none of us. If you don't stay disciplined and grounded throughout the early stages of pursuing your career, whether it's medicine, law, entrepreneurship, whatever it may be, then you'll fall into many of these traps and obstacles that are all there just to really take you off your path. So in my field, what I've kind of done, you have to be able to make a to-do list, and you have to be able to kind of check off those things on the to-do list. You have to stay laser focused. And the absolute biggest thing is knowing when to say no. And throughout my journey in medicine, I've lost so many friends, sacrificed so many social events and gatherings and weddings and all kinds of stuff just to keep on my path and to achieve my goal of, practicing medicine and becoming a physician. People think it's difficult and impossible to say no to a close friend or family member who's graduating, getting married, having a baby. If you don't attend their events, then they're not going to be your friend anymore. If that's the case, then they probably weren't truly your friend in the first place. You probably need to find somebody else to be close to you. And if they really truly understand your grind and your work ethic, then they'll understand your reasoning behind your absence. So, it's truly vital to stay disciplined and stay on path and on course, because there's a lot of things and a lot of people that'll purposely try to take you off that course to bring them down with you. So never let any of that really get in the way, and just that end goal should be your main focus in life. So whatever comes in the way in between that, you should not let that slow you down or stop you. Now once you achieve that goal and you're in a stable part of your career and you've truly defined success in your own words, then you can kind of relax your definition of discipline, in my opinion. But really early on, being a youth, you really need to develop this core value early on in life, because that it needs to be there in order for you to achieve all your goals. Because I promise you, you'll never be successful without being disciplined and grounded and knowing exactly when to say no. You just won't. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So,
man, I love what you said about even if you lose friends, like that's a part of, if you have a goal that you've set and you stay disciplined and you're on that track, like you're gonna, like I have to get here. This is where I'm going to go. But even another important point to add to that is those supporters, you mentioned that too, the ones who support you and understand why you're doing what you're doing, they're going to encourage you. They're going to help kind of fuel you to reach your goal. And then those ones who maybe want to pull you away from that, then you start to realize maybe who's not a friend who has your best interests at heart. So really, I really appreciate you sharing that part about you will maybe lose some people along the way, but the question is, were they really truly your friend? So that's good.
Exactly. No, I agree with that 100%, and everyone's going to come across those friends that are going to try to bring you down and try to pull you away from your end goal. But, you have to have the discipline to stay disciplined, to stay on course. And like I said, know when to say no. Tell your friends that you have something more important. Now, you can't just not be disciplined, throughout your whole life. And then one day when they have a huge event that means a lot to them, tell them no, you have to, study or something. Because this discipline, it carries on throughout your entire life. It's tough to just do that once and then have that friend then that friend is probably just going to question you and why you changed all of a sudden. But, it should be something that you develop throughout life. And you got to be consistent with it until you, like I said, you get to that level of success or whatever you measure success by.
Yeah. Another thing I'll add to that too is like, man, when you mentioned that, and I forgot to say something about that. So when you know how to say no. So there's this book I read, I think it's called The Power of a Positive No. And in that book, he talks about when you're saying no, you're saying yes to something else. And so for your instance, in your case, when you were saying no to maybe, social events, you're saying yes to finishing your goal of becoming a doctor. Mm-hmm. And so like, I want to encourage our young men too, who are watching this right now, is that when you are saying no to something, know what you're saying yes to. So that's great advice. And thanks for sharing that wisdom, that insight. So the next core value is education. So when we talk about education, we talk about having goals, but it's not just about the classroom. Education is, we should be lifelong learners and always getting better at what we do. But also in middle school and high school, we encourage the boys to not get so focused on, hey, my teacher did this to me. She gave me this grade. He gave me this grade. And I tell them, no, that's not the case at all. Like, you have to earn the grade. There's typically a rubric on how you're graded. So that grade is for you. It's not really for your parents. It's for you. Your parents might encourage you, might have expectations, but at the end of the day, like, it's about you being internally motivated to succeed and wanting to do well. So can you talk about what education has meant to you and what it still means to you?
So education, I'm sure everyone knows education, to be a medical doctor, you can't do it without education. So, with that being said, my education has been critical to achieving the level of success that I've achieved. To get to this point, you have to have your high school diploma. Then you have to go to undergraduate school, a 4-year degree in undergraduate school, and then you have to do 4 years of medical school, and that's followed by 3 years of residency, 3 or more, depending on what your field you're specializing in, of residency training. And then you can kind of practice on your own. So don't let this discourage you, especially if medicine is something that you'd love to pursue. It's definitely a long and grueling process, but ultimately it's worth it, especially if you love what you do. Now, I'm definitely an all-out advocate for education. I wouldn't be here without education. However, there have been many successful entrepreneurs, primarily, who have gotten to their level of success, with simply a high school diploma. And I applaud them for that, but sometimes I question some of their educational, the fundamentals of education, like, some simple math that some of them struggle with, some of the writing skills that you just need throughout life, advanced social and interpersonal skills that you can develop through advanced courses in college and whatnot. A great deal of the social and interpersonal skills that you develop for later in life are actually learned throughout college. This is not only done by taking these courses in college, but really having an opportunity to live on your own when you go off to college. You start developing and having all these responsibilities. You have to be on class on time, really on your own time, completing your homework assignments on time without your parents telling you to do so. So there's a lot of valuable skills outside of the classroom that occur throughout your educational years. It's not just in the classroom, like you were saying, Brennan. The only major thing I'd love to change about our educational system, is to incorporate more real world scenarios and courses that we're required to take to kind of help us, pay taxes, raise kids, things of that sort. But nonetheless, you can still educate yourself in a world we live in now, in the internet age. YouTube is absolutely amazing in many ways. Obviously, it can be hurtful in some ways, but overall, there are videos on just about everything. You can teach yourself anything nowadays, but having that education, going to school, will really, develop your fundamental skills and knowledge that you really need to carry throughout your life. Otherwise, you're going to be lost in a lot of conversation that you have with other people, people that have been educated and whatnot. You're just going to feel a little left out. So, education is definitely something that's essential, as well as, discipline and integrity. Education is just up there in the core values. Yeah.
Man, that's really good. And I'm with you as an educator. There's some things that I would like to improve as well. And especially those practical things that we do in life that you mentioned, as far as like just the financial literacy, being able to pay taxes, understanding tax laws and tax codes, and family, raising a family. So true. I appreciate you sharing that. And man, I cannot agree enough with you about YouTube. I've learned so many things on YouTube, and like, most of the time it's free content, right? Somebody out there is just willing to share this with you. And sometimes they may be asking for something too, but in many cases, like, you really can learn more about a particular topic or concept. So yeah, YouTube's my best friend too. So thanks for sharing that.
Of course.
If you don't mind, can you talk a little bit more about residency for those who may not know what that means?
Yeah, absolutely. So after 4 years of medical school, so throughout medical school, the first 2 years are where you're doing all your educational, all your book work. So you're sitting in the classroom 8 hours a day sometimes, just packing all this knowledge in your brain. 2 years, the second 2 years, or the third and fourth year of medical school, you're kind of doing clinical work. So now you're in the hospital, in the outpatient clinics, in the family medicine clinics or whatnot, you're kind of seeing this firsthand and putting all this book work into use, but you're still under the umbrella of being in school. So you still don't have that responsibility per se. Now, after you finish your 4 years of medical school, you enter what now you're technically graduated from medical school. So you have the medical degree, you're an MD. However, you cannot practice until you've achieved 3 years of residency, which is just training into the particular field that you would like to, one day become, whether that's a family medicine physician, whether that's a surgeon, anesthesiologist, whatever the case may be. You do 3 to, let's say, 6 years of residency training. And now you're basically a doctor that's practicing, but you have other levels of doctors above you that will still teach you and tell you what's right and from what's wrong. Ultimately, the responsibility is still on you. Your name is still being signed, but there are always a hierarchy of physicians, or what are called attendings, that are above you, that will help you, guide you through this training process. And so you'll slowly climb that totem pole until you've completed residency, and then attending is the final, where you're kind of on your own, you're practicing on your own. So it's just additional levels of training as a real doctor, but not technically on your own without completing these training years.
So thank you, man. And what you just taught me, and I know you taught our guys who are watching this right now, is that no matter where you are in life, you can always benefit from a mentor, right? Somebody who has more experience than you, who has your best interest at heart, like we do at Seeds of Wisdom, to mentor you, to get you to where, we're cultivating that potential. And after you leave here, this is where the growth begins, right? Mm-hmm. And so even in the medical field, and you're considered a doctor once you finish, if I'm hearing you correctly, but you still have people who have your best interests at heart and say, hey, like, you got to do it this way. I've learned over the years that you want to avoid this, you want to do this. And so you can always use a mentor no matter what phase of life you're in, because somebody's always going to know more than you, have had more experience than you. And they just help you avoid some of those challenges, right? And avoid some of those obstacles and those barriers. So that's fantastic. And then you taught me more about the medical field and what it means to go through residency, because I really only knew about the surface level of what it meant.
Yeah. It's a long process to be where we're at. That's why there's a lot of trust that's placed in our hands, because of the amount of education that, it requires for us to be where we're at, compared to physician assistants, PAs, or nurse practitioners who don't have that extra level of residency and training to really go through a lot of these real world scenarios. Under training is really essential in creating a medical doctor. So you really kind of have to have that training. And sometimes some doctors don't even feel like that's enough, because there's so much more to still see outside of that training. You're still continuously learning, even outside of after training. When you're on your own, you're always seeing new things, making new diagnoses, always seeing certain types of patients for the first time. So you're always learning, and there's always, more education that you have to kind of do every 3 years. You have to have a certain amount of what we call CME credits to maintain your license. Then you have to be board certified. To be board certified, you have to take an exam every 10 years on top of that. So education will never go away from my field. But, at this point now, I'm kind of at the end of the tunnel. So, life is definitely much better. And a good deal of the education is behind me, which is a good feeling.
Yeah, man, that's wow. That's all I can say is wow. And even in education, I'm a professional educator and former teacher and now an administrator. And same thing, we call it CTE, continuing training or education, right? To get those credits to be able to renew your certificate every so often. Usually for us in the education field, it's like every 5 years. And so for me, I'm earning a doctorate in education. So not a medical doctor, but an educational doctor, which means I have achieved the highest level of training and education, and educational leadership is what I'm focusing on. So yeah, man, education is definitely important. It's lifelong. So thank you for sharing more about your experiences. And we're wrapping up. We're getting to the last core value, which is ambition. And so with ambition, we're talking about being strategic, having a vision, being able to align your goals with that vision. And you mentioned a little bit about that earlier, but can you add more to what ambition means to you and goal setting and monitoring your goals?
Yeah. So, I mean, like the goals, the best way I've managed my ambition is to set, attainable goals. And this means not only, long-term goals, but short-term goals as well. You want to set multiple easy short-term goals that, you want to achieve either daily, weekly, monthly, and then goals you want to achieve multiple years down the line, 5 years from now. Always have a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan, always, and do whatever it is in your power to achieve that. Now, like I said, do whatever you can to achieve those goals and attain those goals. For me personally, it was really something that motivation is also something that I want to add to that, actually. Not only attaining goals, but finding that motivating factor. For me personally, it was actually making my parents very proud of me. It was a big thing for me. They've done so much to get me where I'm at right now that, the biggest thing I want to see is a smile on their faces and to say that they're proud of me. The second biggest reason was financial freedom and to never really have to worry about money again, and I've really used those two as my ammo when times have been tough for me. So those are definitely essential, setting those goals and finding a big motivating factor. Another thing that plays a big role in ambition is be patient. Good things always come to those who are patient. Now that doesn't mean that you just sit around and hope that good things are going to come and just forget about everything, and hopefully win the lottery or something like that. That's not what I mean. What I mean by being patient is continuing on your path and doing what you're supposed to do, and trying to achieve your goals. And in the meantime, there will always be opportunities that will present themselves. Now, whether you pursue that opportunity or not, that's totally up to you. But always be patient. Never rush the process. Trust the process.
Guys, I don't know if you caught it, but that was some amazing advice. We were talking about having motivating factors. And those of you who spent some time with us as mentees of Seeds of Wisdom, you probably heard something familiar that we always say to you. You can have daily goals. You can have weekly goals. You can break it down into smaller chunks, right? You don't have to say, I'm going to do this in 5 years and then not have anything that's going to help you get to that point. But, as you heard Dr. Mistry say, he's like, look, I got my parents that motivate me. I want to make them proud. I want to have a positive family legacy. Also want to focus on financial freedom. So he made a plan to get to where he is. He didn't just, sit back and say, well, I want to be a doctor, but I don't want to do any work. That usually doesn't work. And it never works, right? You got to go do some work to get to that point. So this has been awesome. I really appreciate your time. It's good to catch up with you. Any other final words? So the theme of our conference is to stand tall and stand firm. So obviously we have in our logo, the tree, right? And so we plant these seeds and eventually we want them to take root and to grow so that these guys can stand tall and stand firm. You want to add anything to that?
I just want to, say that you got to remember that this is all about you, whether it's integrity, discipline, getting a good education or whatnot, you're doing this all for you and your success, really nobody else, depending on what your motivating factors are, but you're really doing it ultimately for yourself. I know you'd love to see, your mother, father, wife, girlfriend, happy and see you succeed, but ultimately it's for your happiness and for your success and for your financial well-being. If you compromise on any of these core values, there's going to be consequences. The consequences are basically going to affect your livelihood and your well-being and ultimately your success in the future. So plant that seed. Make sure those roots are nice and strong and firm. And those roots, and what I mean by those roots are your core values of discipline, integrity, education, and ambition. And make sure those are strong and firm and develop at an early age, so that can carry on with you for the rest of your life. Okay, because without these, the tree will be weak, I promise you, and it will topple over. So you must have these essential core values. I mean, these four couldn't have been said any differently or any better by myself than what was presented to me. So that's what I would have to say, you know, closing remarks. But I wish all of you the best of luck in all of your endeavors, whether it's pursuing medicine, you know, pursuing being an entrepreneur, pursuing, you know, just working a 9-to-5 job, whatever the case may be. Trust the process, okay, and just stay true to yourself. Don't be dishonest, and stay laser focused, and set very attainable goals and reach those goals. Don't slack on any of those.
Man, this has been so awesome. We could sit here and talk all day, but we're both two very busy guys. I mean, I really appreciate you and your time. And once again, I just want to say thank you to Dr. Mistry for helping us continue to plant these seeds. We know that if you focus on these core values in your life, you can accomplish almost anything. You have to be a young man of integrity. You need to be disciplined. You need to think about education not being about just your family or your teachers. You got to have that internal motivation and be ambitious, have goals, right? And when you have those goals, it's really hard, and you're disciplined. It's hard for people to knock you off that track because you know what you want in life and you know what you want to do for people. I love being an educator. So I have the opportunity, the privilege to get to do what I want to do. And when I'm at work, I never feel like I'm actually working. I might be tired from having a long day, but like I enjoy the work that I do. I enjoy helping families. And so Dr. Mistry, thank you again, man. It's great to talk to you. It's good to see you. And thank you for helping us continue to plant the seeds.
Thank you for having me. Best of luck to everybody and all the youth in their future endeavors.